Hey, Scott.
How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
See that unmuted yet? So now you're unmuted.
Okay, that's good. And if I wanna,
Well, you're not unmuted. This Scott Morris is unmuted. See that little red thing?
Okay.
That means you're unmuted.
okay,
You're open. So if you do Alt A. Alt A, both at the same time, unmute.
Hi, Mrs. Corbin.
I think you're okay, don't you?
yeah. It's storming here.
Warm.
I know if it storms too much.
Okay. Say hello to everybody.
Hi,
Okay.
Mr. Salerno.
Hello there.
Hello.
How are you? You're looking good. You're looking great.
Great. Nice to
Huh?
see you. Nice to see you, Mr. Salerno.
You get the meeting started? Let's go.
Kilburn.
Deb, can you hear me?
I can. Yes. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. John,
How
hello.
are you?
It's so nice to see you.
Yeah.
You look great on.
Hello, Mr. Griffin.
John, you're muted.
Pardon?
Oh, not you, John Salerno. I was talking to John Griffin. He's muted. He's got his mute button
Oh,
on. But I think you were saying hello back. So if you're new to using the controls, on your screen in the lower left-hand side, you should have like a black square. And in the lower left-hand side, your side, there's a picture of a microphone that you can click on to mute and unmute. And there's a picture of a video camera. And if you click that, we can't see your face anymore. So while we're in the meeting, we want everyone to mute when you're not talking, so we don't have background noise, and unmute when you want to talk. And if you confuse that, which I do all the time, don't worry, we'll tell you, you're muted.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm unmuted, so
Hello, John. It's so nice to have you here.
thank you.
Doreen, looking super fly with the glasses,
Yeah.
all ready to go. Gary Forcelli, hello. So I'm dying to know, Gary, what are you eating? And I do this to Chris Hill all the time. He eats in meetings and I'll say, Chris, what are you eating? So Gary, what are you eating?
He's muted.
He knows he's muted. Yep.
Oh.
go. There we go. Can you hear me now? Gorgonzola and Triscuits.
Triscuits with what on it? Dill pickle? Dill?
Gorgonzola cheese,
Oh.
Italian blue.
Ooh, blue cheese. Blue cheese scares me. It's like
Amen.
Gorgonzola on Triscuits. Now that's nice. Good
It's
snack.
an affiliation with the mold, considering my age.
Yeah, I've never actually had the courage to even try blue cheese, which is silly because my husband loves it. He says it's delicious, but it's the whole blue part.
Well, blue and the Italian version, which is Gorgonzola, pretty much the same thing. I am partial to brie, however.
Is brie a moldy cheese? Because I love brie. I just love brie. It's such a mellow, soft, light cheese.
Yep.
Salt. Good choice.
There was a restaurant in the area that would serve you brie, and they would put some slivered almonds on top of it, run it through the nucleator so that it was a little bit melty, and then you could take it and spread it on crackers.
I love brie with pears. Have you ever had like a sandwich and it's got like ham, brie, and a little bit of sliced pear? I know that sounds weird, but it's really yummy.
That one I'll have to try.
Hello, Yvonne. Can you hear us? You're muted, so we can't hear you, but you're smiling, and I'm assuming you're saying nice things.
Can you hear me? How about now?
Yep, we can hear you.
And probably everything else that's going on. Hold on. Okay.
Awesome. All right, so we're just waiting on a few more people and we'll be ready to begin.
Hey. Trying to get you on my other thing, but it's not working.
Well, for what it's worth, it's working for you. You're sitting, we can see you, we can hear you. Are you kicking back on a couch? Is that what's going on?
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
gonna
kinda
put you on
jealous.
mute because I got work being in my house. All right.
Hello, Charlene.
Hi, hi, oh, Yvonne, when are we ever gonna meet in person?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So, it's funny. I have reached out to our attorneys because we are such a big board, and I mean that in the best sense. It's a little more complicated because we're a 12-member board, plus with the other additions in the room, it brings us to 18, which right now is a prohibitive number for gatherings. But I'm equally desiring to see everybody in person. Today was such a nice day because typically in our office, we're switching off. So where Ann Whiteman will be in, I'll work remotely and then we'll switch. And today we both work together. And you know, it's a little strange because you're wearing masks and talking to each other. It's bizarre. Or you're standing like a room's length apart and you're talking to each other. But it was so good to see a coworker physically instead of just a floating head. Right, Jen?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm on
Yes.
the same page. Hello, Russ. Can you hear us? Okay. Russ can hear us.
Yes, I can.
Perfect. And Elaine, can you hear us? Okay, wonderful.
Yes, I can.
Great.
Hey, Elaine,
Hi.
Charlene, Deb.
Hi,
Elaine,
Russ.
Scott.
No,
Hi, Doreen.
Hi, Michelle. 9:10.
Doreen, are you getting the thunderstorms right now?
Yes. Are you?
Yeah, they're just starting to roll in. God knows we need the rain.
Yes, we do.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I feel like we're missing 3. Who are we missing? We're waiting
Mike
for
Moore.
Gary, Mike Moore, Gary Nelson, and
Dr. Priscelli.
nope, he's here. Gary's right there. We had that fascinating conversation about Gorgonzola and Brie.
Mr. Boucher.
That's it.
Mike Moore there?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Mike, Gary Nelson, and Steve Boucher.
Steve.
Oh, there's
There he
Steve
is.
coming in now.
Hey, Gary.
Hello.
Steve,
Steve, can you hear us? Okay,
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. I'll
Wonderful.
go on mute then.
Okay, so we're waiting for Mike and Gary. So Gary has Zoomed with us previously, so he'll come in, I'm sure.
Mr. Moore may be a few minutes late.
Mhm.
can I see Yvonne?
Yep, she's here. There she is, waving.
Hi, Yvonne. I can't see you. but- Oh, there you are. Okay. Hey, John.
Okay, so
Wow.
Elaine, we're at 4:31. Do
Maybe we should
So,
get started.
you want to get started? Do you want to wait?
Or Mr.
Nelson and Mr. Moore.
Should be here, I would think. There he
Oh, there
is.
he is.
Okay. And Deb said that Mr. Moore may be a little late, so maybe we ought to get started and call the June meeting of the Cooperative Board to order. And I would like to ask John Griffin to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Is he there? Okay.
Brother Griffin is muted.
I
Shall I try?
Pledge allegiance.
To the flag
Flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for
Which
which
it
it stands, one nation under God,
One nation,
indivisible, with liberty and
indivisible,
justice for all.
with liberty and
Hey,
justice.
Are we okay? Are we okay now?
Good.
No problem? Everybody can hear?
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right, then we will move forward. We need to announce that this is a closed meeting due to the COVID-19 virus and that it is being recorded. And now we will get to communications, and I have a communication for all of you. You will know about it. As you all know, John Griffin is going to retire from our position on the BOCES board. He represents Sequoia. And John has been with us since 2002. That is 18 years. And before that, he served on the Sequoia board from 1996 to 2001. And when I was thinking about what to say at this meeting, I sort of had a problem. And I wondered, what does one say about a man who has been a truly dedicated member of our board for 18 years? I could say that he's handled his responsibilities with efficiency and expertise, and certainly with class. He's helped build OHM BOCES into the most respected and finest BOCES in the state. And that's correct. John has done that. But that is only part of the story. I could say that John has had a tireless quest for excellence, that he reflected, that this is reflected in the many hours that he spent as both a board officer and as member of many committees. And he especially helped us in the health and safety area with his expertise from Utica National. He always worked alongside the administration, the teachers, and the students to help determine the needs and to strive for the very best that we could provide to all students. And that's correct. But most of all, I would like to stress not only what John has done, but how he has done it. John is a quiet leader, but indeed he is a leader. My memories of John will always be that of his style. It's certainly much different than my style. He is a thinker, a man of few words, but indeed he thinks with thoughtful words. And as I would look at John across from the table from me, I could see his mind working. He listened and he listened and he listened. He wasn't quick to respond, but you could see that he was processing the information. And then, especially at a critical moment or when something important needed to be discussed, John would say, "Could I please say something?" And out would come something reflecting a common sense approach of a man who could analyze a situation and present a very valid reason for taking an action and supporting or not supporting it. And so, John, we need to thank you so much for the many, many years of service that you have given us. You've served with such a deep commitment for all of us, and you've provided an opportunity for us to really high quality service to all our children. Have we got a problem? And I wonder if Connie's there. Does she happen to be there, John?
Well, I could call her upstairs.
Well, we also want to thank Connie for all the loyalty and support that she gave to you. You know, she came to so many conventions with us, and she went to the meetings, and she sat beside you, oftentimes beside me, and she had her paper and her pencil, and she made notes of what was being said. And she always, always showed an interest and a concern for what we were doing. And I think that she influenced you a lot too, John, and
No,
helped
she did.
you in your thinking. So we'd like to present you with a very small token of our appreciation for all that you've done for us, both as a board member and as a man that we're proud to have known and had as a friend. So we have, I don't know if this is going to work, but I will, our usual golden apple that represents and says to John Griffin, for cooperative board member from July 2002 to June 2020. And we also have a certificate. Can everybody see this? I don't know. We also have a certificate for you designating the same thing about your service to us. And Deb is going to be bringing that up to you one of these days pretty soon. So.
Congratulations, John.
I want to thank you, Elaine, for those kind words. And I'm sure, along with my other fellow board members. They know that it's so gratifying, rewarding to serve on the BOCES board and serve our students. It's been a great experience for me. I've enjoyed every minute of it, I have to say, and I've grown through it. It was great meeting all of you folks and developing close relationships with you and traveling with you to conventions and doing our good work. And all the administrators as well that I've had the opportunity to work with over those years. It's been just a great experience. And we were able to get so much accomplished, and there's so much great leadership on our board and has been over the years and in our supervisory ranks. It's been a pleasure. So I won't be a stranger, but I do want to thank all you folks for all your support over those years, and I look forward to continuing our relationship.
And I'd just like to comment once more that you are a real gentleman. And I think that's really a high compliment that we can give someone. You've been with us for 18 years and you've always operated in the same classy manner. So again, we thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. And I will share your comments with Connie.
Okay, you be sure and do that. She'll want to hear that. Okay, now we can move forward to the district superintendent's report.
All right. So there's quite a few things that I want to make sure that we talk about today. And one of them is something that's, clearly all going on right now across the nation, and that's a series of protests surrounded on race in this country, and really speaking to systemic racism or institutional racism, and bringing that to the forefront and kind of putting it right there for everyone to deal with. And I think it's something that we should be prioritizing in our organization. So as a DS, I've had the privilege of working with 36 other district superintendents. And we've been having some conversations about this, holding ourselves personally accountable to learning more, providing voice for others at our table who need voice to talk about their life from their perspective. And we lead educational institutions. We lead institutions that ultimately shape the mindset, thoughts and actions, values and beliefs of a future society, including a criminal justice program. And so as GSs, we really talked about that openly and said, we have to put this front and center within our organization in terms of educating students about institutional racism and what that looks like, in terms of providing voice for students who are impacted and may not feel that they have an avenue to express that, by revisiting history and looking at it from different perspectives. And we've also talked about our employees, that we all work in an organization that's supporting students either directly or indirectly, and a supporting staff who are impacted by this. And that there's an awful lot here, and there's no handbook. There's no guidance that says, this is how you talk about race. This is what you can say. This is what you can't say. And there's no guidance to say, how do you best support someone who might be impacted by this personally and feeling like they need to voice this in their workspace or in their classroom space. And then there is the perspective of our own race. So for example, I am a white woman raised in a white culture, and my understanding of institutional racism is not at all what someone of color may have in this country. So as a leader, how skilled can I be in this? And how can I begin to navigate this in a responsible way and help demonstrate for an organization how to move forward in this manner? Now, I can tell you what I don't have are all the answers. I don't know if I even have right answers, but I'm committed to moving forward personally with this myself. I've talked with the senior council about this, and we've all shared our own perspectives and have recognized that we think this is valuable. But you are the board, so the conversation comes to you. Before I move forward, with it, with an organization, I need to bring this to your attention. So in the discussion and in the dialogue, we really focused on kind of two facets, if you will. We had discussions about our students, and we had discussions about our employees. And Chris shared that there are a few people in his division who are very passionate about this, and that we might have expertise, voice, and perspective within our own body of people that can help lead us through ways to continue to explore this dialogue, to develop organizational accountability and personal accountability, and to take action steps, small steps that slowly move us in the right direction, and in other areas, more swift movement. So Chris is reaching out to them to see what they can bring back to the senior council and to see what next steps we can take. And what I'd like to do is keep this on our agenda and gain your insights and perspectives on that. But we've been talking a lot about the social and emotional learning of our students, and we've been talking a lot about what life has been like for them in COVID, and what will it be like for them coming back. But this conversation really needs to happen and needs to be incorporated into that discussion, along with our own employees and our own staff. So I wanted to bring this to your attention, and if anyone wants to talk about this, I'm certainly here to respond or listen. If there's any insight you want to provide, this is why I've brought it up. So having said that, I'm just going to be quiet for a minute. Russ.
Since we don't have I think the board has been talking about this, even as we were getting prepared to interview for a DS. These issues came up. Not the institutional part, but within our own BOCES. And if we don't have the expertise, why don't we go to it? The NAACP is there. There's many organizations who have a lot of knowledge in regard to how to present to all parties these issues. So, let's bring the experts in. I don't know if you want to do this as a BOCES or as a region, but I'm sure the SBI could probably put something together to help move this along. I think it's their responsibility also to look at the big picture. But that's, immediately that's my 2 cents. I'll sit back and listen.
Thank you. Makes sense. Elaine, I don't know if you're speaking, but you're muted.
I'm muted. Okay. I'm just wondering if we should take a little more initiative and develop some kind of a perspective or a statement or a declaration of how we feel about these things, and then see how we can feed this into our organization. I know we have a lot of avenues in which we can do it. I think Russ's idea is a good idea. Maybe, his organization, his group can begin this work for us, but we need to develop some kind of paths and roads to better cover the needs that we follow. For instance, in as far as our faculty is concerned, how is that composed? How does that line up with our students? What does it look like? Should it look like our student body looks? And obviously we're always out for the best of everything, but certainly if we put this in our mind and each of us has that kind of belief, a little at a time it will move. I don't think we have to go out gun ho, but I think we need to get it through the organization that is important to us and filter down to the students and to the parents somehow. It's maybe a slow process, and maybe school boards could begin that process for us. But I think we need to be a little stronger about our feelings. We have them, I believe, as individuals, but let's put it together and use it as a group as we make decisions and do things.
I think BOCES needs to put out a statement. Everywhere you look, ICANN, different organizations have put out a statement as a whole of they will not stand for discrimination, racism, brutality. And I know it's a very touchy subject. I've been talking to a lot of people, and people are always worried about hurting someone else's feelings. But I think that this is a strong stance that we should take as a BOCES. I think we should come out saying something, because I'm under the opinion if you stay silent, that means you agree with what's going on. So that's just my personal opinion. But I think as BOCES, we should say, as a BOCES, we will not stand. I don't know who's going to put the words together, but I think it should come out, from the BOCES.
So that is absolutely something we can do. And I would work with the school communications department to shape that message. That as an organization, these are our values and our beliefs, and this is not something we're going to stand for, and what we do stand for.
We could develop a resolution to that effect that would formally at some meeting state our position, but then we need to practice what we're preaching and get this infiltrated into the organization. So I could go along with that, forming a resolution and supporting it as a board. Is everybody, any other comments? Anyone else have?
No, I just think that, we just have to act sooner as opposed to later. I mean, we move forward, and I agree 100% with what's been said.
So will you work on that, Dr. Kilburn?
I will. And Gary Nelson would like to speak. So I'm just going to ask, if you are not speaking right now, if you would just mute your computer so that way that background noise can kind of go away. Gary?
I don't think I've been silent over the years of where I stand on this, so I don't think it's going to come as a surprise to anybody. But I've also been watching Fox News. And, the people that are watching that are getting a totally different story than people watching anything else. And I don't know where our constituents stand on this thing. And I don't know if we should be, our statement of support, or the statement should be educational, that, they're using this as an opportunity to say how bad the school systems are. They're going to be using this as a advocating for schools to, say our school system is out of touch. And I think we got to be careful. I would come out with an absolute total endorsement of what's going on. I am, if anything, shocked it's taken so long, for people to stand up and say no. But we're talking to our community, and our community may not be as supportive of us as we think they are.
So there sounds like there might be an opportunity here. Can I just, Gary, can you mute your, I'm wondering if there's an opportunity. So by coming out with a statement, you have an opportunity to take a stance, which I think is needed. And yet you also have an opportunity to clarify that with, we're taking this stance, and we're going to take clear steps to get there. So you can take your stance, which is like, we realize this is where we should be, and we acknowledge we might not be there yet. And we're owning this, that we have got to get here because this is where we need to be. So you could take a stance with an aspirational viewpoint. That might help, because I think, and I might be misunderstanding Gary, so correct me if I am. I think the point might be that we can come out and say, we are not in support of racism of any kind and institutional racism. And someone could come in and go, that's interesting, because if you take a look at your student body, they're extremely diverse. And if you take a look at your teaching body, they're extremely not diverse. So maybe you're just talking the talk and not walking the walk. Is that the disparity that you were talking about, Gary?
I think it's a little more than that. I honestly, you know, I come out of a work environment that I am sure is right on Fox News's agenda of it's the fault of the protesters, you know, that they're just not towing the line. And for us to come out and support them, I think we should. I think we do need to make a statement, but I think there's got to be making sure that we're in a way educating our constituents of why we are taking this stand, not just we are.
Okay, that sounds more clear to me. So it's important that we take a stance. It's important that we define our values and beliefs around that stance. It's important that we acknowledge where we are not in comparison to that. And it's important to understand and explain the rationale for making the stance in the first place. Now that I just bulleted those off and I've got head nods, I completely forgot the 4 points. I need to write them down right now. Any other?
This is a work in progress is what it is. I mean, we're stating our beliefs, and we're stating that we're working towards those beliefs, and we're beginning to design some plans to make us stronger and balance us more to get there. So it's a statement, but it's not one that's going to hit people on the heads in a sense of, here's the heroes and we're doing all these things. We need to do them. They're important for us to do. So could you work with communications and such and sort of put that together as you understand it and see where we go?
Yes, I can. And I want to speak to that timepiece. So I heard some differences. One was, let's put this together, adopt it with a board resolution, and then send that forward. So that would be July. And then other people were like, we need to do something sooner. So I do need some consensus on the group regarding that.
Can I just say
Go ahead,
something?
Michelle.
Yeah, just to this whole point, I'm listening to what everyone has to say, and I agree. We definitely need to make a statement. That does not mean that we have to have everything below the statement worked out yet, but I do think our community needs to know that we respect our community, and this is a very deep topic, and I never know the right things to say. But I hope that you can put it together, Dr. Kilburn, in the right way.
As do I.
If I may, Dr. Kilburn, 2 points, and I think this stays in with what other folks have said. First of all, I would be in favor of something being done sooner rather than later, because if it's done later, it would look like we're just jumping on the bandwagon. And I think we need to exercise our leadership in this area. Secondly, I do want to point out, and I think we need to say something to my friend Mr. Hill and the committee who did the student handbook, because there are a number of positive references to this particular subject within the handbook that evidently we are already taking steps, and I think that needs to be just made note of.
Thank you. Okay, so I think what I'll do is, oh, Ross, did you want to speak?
No, the sooner the better. I mean, everybody knows my personality. I'm not a type of person who's going to tiptoe around anything. You know, if you don't believe in it, sometimes you fall for anything. And it's either right or it's not. And somewhere in this process, we need to do a self-inventory of our organization and where we fit into the institutional prejudices ourselves. I think that's extremely important because it does exist. I mean, if you read the handbook or that the code of conduct, boy, you know, you can pick out, you know, I never understand in the code of conduct why we don't focus also on good conduct and what that will bring to the process. I mean, you give me 40 pages of misbehaviors and I mean, yeah, give me the numbers of the students who fall under that and give me their races and their ethnicity. And then let's have a conversation in regards to where we are in institutional prejudices. Because we fall right there. That code of conduct just made me sick. I read it all, but you know, there's good students and there's good conduct, and it's a code of conduct. It's not a code of misbehavior. That's the document you gave me to read. I don't want to go off on a tangent on that, but I believe within this whole racial institutional racism, I hate to say it, but we're there. So sooner the better.
Okay, so I'm hearing sooner. So I think this might be the approach to use. I'm going to work with Schoolcom, draft a statement for release. And then based on that statement, we can craft a resolution to adopt as our commitment. So if we're good with that, I think I'd like to move forward that way. So in order to know as a board, if you're on board with that, we don't need an official vote, but I guess I could get one of these, like go forth, Trish. I got one. Thumbs up if you want me to go forth. All right, that's where I'm going. I'm forthing. Okay.
I
Moving
just want to
on.
be sure,
Oh, ahead, Gary. Yep.
within this statement, that it's not just, this is where we stand, but why?
Yes.
Why we decided to make this statement.
So I have.
That should be part of our mission statement, no?
Yeah, you know,
somewhere in that mission statement, it should reflect the ideals that we tried to put out there. So hopefully it's in there, and you can use your mission statement to start the process.
So what I'm going to do, and first of all, I want to thank everyone for the contributions to the discussion. It was rich, and we already have a place to go now just by bringing it here for our conversation. And with the board's permission, I'm going to continue to bring this up so we don't lose sight of it. However, to Gary Nelson, I think what we're going to do is we're going to define our stance, state it and define it, our aspirations. We're going to acknowledge gaps, and we're going to give the rationale for the stance, which I think will explain that. So I did remember my 4 bullets, wrote them down. We're good to go. Okay, so I'm going to move forward to the next topic, which is the State Education Department statewide regional reopening task force. So this is interesting. So the governor came out and said, I'm going to do a reimagining education task force. And he didn't invite anyone from state education or public education to be a part of that. And you might recall that our interim commissioner of education, along with the chancellor, put out a press release saying that they were going to form task forces to just provide some information about reopening and reimagining, and they would give that information to the governor. And since then, the governor, I think, has revised his task force. Now, what was interesting was that in the state education world, that wasn't nuanced what that would look like. And it didn't look like DSs were going to be able to play a role in some of that. And I think Michelle or someone even asked me about it and said, hey, you know, no DSs here. I'm like, yep. So that has changed. What's happening is this: the state education department has broken the state into 4 zones. Our zone, the one we're in, is called the Central New York Zone, and it consists of 8 different BOCES. So these are really big zones. And they're going to host a series of virtual Zoom meetings that are invite only. And the regions and state education department solicited invitations, gave out invitations, I should say, to various people from various organizations, parent groups, advocacy groups throughout the state to attend a virtual Zoom meeting like this that would have breakout rooms. And then I think it might have been last week, if not, it was like the Friday before last week, they shared with DSs that they would kind of help us be in charge of that, and that we would take that on happily so. So what we've been asked to do is populate any names that they don't have. So for example, after the state ed department kind of filled the lists in with who they wanted to bring to these meetings, if there were any empty spots, we were asked to go solicit for specific types of things like directors of bilingual programs, directors of technology programs, parents of special education students, whatever it is. The total limit of participants is 200 for the entire region. So among the 9 BOCES region, 200 participants. And then they're broken into these 9 breakout rooms with like up to 12 people in a room. So that's where we are. I've had one meeting to learn what we're being asked to do, one meeting to help 8 other DSs try to populate invitations. I'm having a meeting tomorrow to receive a script and go through a dress rehearsal. And then on the 17th, we're hosting these meetings. In terms of discussion, the 9 breakout rooms that they are going to have discussions around are digital equity, teaching and learning, social and emotional learning, safety and risk management, bilingual and English new language learners programming, one group that covers transportation, facilities, and food and nutrition, a group to talk about special education, another one to talk about human resources and staffing, and another one to talk about finance. I will be leading a breakout room. I don't know which one I've been assigned to lead, and I will certainly fill you in on my learnings in that process. All of that information is being collected by note takers, sent to state education department, and they're going to use it. What they said they're going to do is they're going to use that as part of the information they need to shape policy and guidance. So I talked to our superintendents about it. I did ask them if anybody was interested to send forward names according to the different groups and the types of roles that the state education department was looking for. I was able to invite some people within the BOCES organization. So that could be good, that we could have some voice in that. However, there are a lot of other equally informative opportunities that are being provided. There was the thought exchange. I sent an invitation out to you to participate in that. All of that data is being shared up with state ed. And then there's the governor's group. And in addition, county level groups and each of the school districts are also coming up with all these ideas on reentry and planning. As the DSs, we keep moving those ideas up the chain. So though it's an invite only, and I will at least be able to share the part that I play a role in, I do think there are other opportunities for people to continue to contribute to that discussion. And I would encourage the board to share their thoughts and feelings with me so I can channel that up in the best ways that I can as the guidance comes out or as we begin to learn more. So I wanted to let you know about that because it will be a big initiative and our BOCES is somewhat involved, but in a kind of limited way. So that's the news on the state education department's task force. The next thing I wanted to talk about, I just want to take a look at my agenda and make sure that I'm on point, is the COVID-19 employee reentry guidance. So I have been sharing in the updates that come out via email that we're really working on bringing people back. And the students, well, until the governor's most recent announcement, the students aren't expected to come back possibly until the fall. So we've been focusing within our BOCES and also providing safety guidance across the entire OHM region to superintendents about reentry of employees. We've got ourselves in a pretty good position in terms of a guidance document, and we are waiting for some attorney feedback regarding the types of things that we can or cannot ask of employees. For example, if an employee were to call and say, I'm not feeling well, I'm not coming in, I don't know whether or not we can say, you got a fever, you got the chills, you got a cough, are you short of breath? You know, because that could be a violation of their HIPAA rights. And that's where we're trying to get some clarification. Part of the process is that, you know, we want to make sure that the employees feel well when they come into our buildings, and we have to have plans for if they're not well, ways they can communicate that to supervisors, but then also ways that contact tracers can then come in and actually find a way to trace who might have been in contact with whom, should anyone be sick. So that's kind of the final piece that we're working on before we move forward with bringing everyone completely back. And once we have that guidance completely done, of course, we're going to share that with you as board members as well as within the organization. One of the things that I talked to you about in an email, and because I had some employees ask about it, was the fact that we have this HVAC system here. The windows don't open, and people are hearing, you need to open windows and doors and ventilate more. So I reached out to Charlie, and he was wise enough to call our architect and our HVAC mechanical person, along with Bob Harris and Patty Serio from safety, to join us in a meeting. They talked about the systems that we have, and they went back and applied that against the capacity of the rooms and gave us guidance to indicate what we can do about that concern. And I feel good. I got some information today that makes me feel more secure. Maybe security and confidence, I guess, is just a feeling, but it felt like a nice warm blanket to wrap around me. And it was this. We can't really do anything, and it does get secure, I promise you. What we can't do is open windows because our windows don't open. And what we can't do is increase the intensity of filtration in the systems, like put like HEPA filters in, or because that would like burn the system out. And what we are asked not to do also is to increase the rate of air exchange, because that will exhaust the system. It will break the HVAC system. So what they did tell us was that each of the rooms is built for a total capacity of people. So let's say a classroom is built for the capacity of 39 people. Any less people you have in that, without making changes to airspeed or anything like that, changes the level, increases the ventilation rate or for the individuals who are left in the room. So because in most of our spaces, we're not fully at capacity, we're actually in a very safe environment in terms of that question. So for example, in this office space I'm in, it was designed for, let's say, 6 people. Well, only 2 people are using it. So we have like twice the ventilation rate, I guess would be the term I would use, than we normally would have if this room is at full capacity. So I've had a conversation with senior council, talked with Chris Hill about classrooms up on campus, and we're in good shape. We're at half capacity in those spaces. We are looking at Court Street because we didn't build that building, right? So we're coming to understand that. And I think that's the tack we're going to take. We'll come to understand the system, and based on that system, we're going to use it to make some decisions about occupancy. So considering that we're going to have to make sure there's 6 feet of space between all these desks, that's going to limit the capacity of the room anyway. We'll have an idea of whether that's, safe and appropriate for people when they're using the building. In some cases, this might mean flexible schedules. And this is another reason I want to bring it to your attention. For example, in our safety department, that's like a bullpen, right? So it's an open room with like 12 desks. And we might actually only be able to put 6 people in it or 7 people in it, which means that though we might be fully physically returned to work, we're still going to have some employees who are maybe working from home on some days and coming in on other days in an effort to meet that need. So we're also looking at productivity options for remote work and building the expectations for that environment. And as I get updated, I'm going to continue to reach out and tell you more. So Gary Nelson has a question. You're gonna want to unmute. Yep.
I'm glad you've asked this question, because it's been on my mind too. My assumption was that we're in a brand new building or fully renovated building, so this has been pre-thought out. But what about our component school districts? Are we going through the same exercise there?
In the general guidance that we've been sharing out, and we're getting some of it from CDC guidance and other area guidance, it does talk about consider your HVAC systems and ventilation, but each school system is built differently. Most schools have operating windows. So, the ability to open up a window in a classroom means something entirely different for a superintendent of that kind of building versus our kind of building. We've also talked about water. CDC has shared water guidelines. If your buildings have been shut down for a while, make sure that you get the water lines running and safe and appropriate, so there's no harbingers of bacteria and icky stuff in the water lines, things like that. So that's in those guidance documents that we're sharing with everyone. And we went through a walkthrough, we shared them out with the superintendents, and then we met last week and just kind of all went through that document together and clarified any questions that any of the superintendents had.
I have a question. So is there any consideration for children that are currently interacting with each other? Maybe neighbors that are in the same classroom, or kids that go to the same daycare or anything like that? Or is there any consideration for parents to just sign a assumption of risk and allow the students to kind of come back to school, with masks on, but then, not having to meet certain other protocols?
So that kind of is going to bring me into the next conversation, and this has just come up, so it's not in our agenda, and I'm going to hook it to this one intentionally. So we're putting all these plans together for our employees, and the governor comes out and says, though he just said summer school had to be virtual, he now has changed that to say special education summer school can now be in person. So that clearly is an opportunity for children, but clearly comes with a whole bunch of risk and a lot of questions. And I'm leery a little bit because what I don't want to do is put kids in a situation where we're testing things, right? We want to know. So to Michelle, to your point, in relationship to that decision, the state education department and the Department of Health put out guidance on those in-person summer schools and what they should look like. And they do talk about things like masks. They do talk about screening, like how are we going to screen people? We're still trying to figure that out. How do we screen to know that our kids are A-okay? What do we do when a child gets sick? But what about masks, right? So we have to keep them socially distanced in the classrooms, but there might be children who can't tolerate masks, who won't wear them or are going to pull them off, and that's okay. They're asking that the teachers be masked, and that in situations where you need to see the teacher's mouth, like in speech therapy, that they can look at an alternate option like a face shield or something. So we just got that guidance. I just started reading it yesterday, and Michelle, I think that's going to shape more of the conversations about what we're going to do with students. But I still haven't picked my way through the entire document yet. So I'm sure there are things in there that I just haven't even read yet. Any other questions? Whoops, I'm going to move on. Okay, so in your agenda, there was a memo in it, but somebody asked the question. I thought I'd just bring it to the forefront in case there was a question. There's a is it pro tempore or I want to pronounce it correctly, appointment of Deb Kimball for the reorganizational meeting. Deb is not resigning. She's not leaving. She's staying with us. What that was is that in the reorg, when you first open, someone's got to start that meeting. And so this is an official process that you take in order to kind of appoint her that she can start that meeting, because we don't have a board president in place to start that meeting for the reorg meeting. In terms of summer programming, I forgot, I wanted to go back and talk about that. Chris has really had to take a different tack. So Mr. Hill and his group worked really hard on virtual summer school. And now there's this other option of something physical. And what might that mean? So I'm just going to ask Chris to take a few brief moments to talk about initially kind of what we're thinking now, but please understand this can all change as it has been changing.
so we, up until last Friday, we had virtual options for all of our summer school programs. And then Friday night, we had to kind of start shifting gears to look at, because of the possibility of an in-person option for special education summer school. And with that, we still have a lot of concerned families and parents that aren't ready to send kids to a facility yet they need instruction. So we developed for special education summer school, the regular education summer school will remain virtual. We have programs set up that we're working with districts on. But for special education, we've decided that to create a hybrid model that would allow students to remain virtual or allow students to come to school. So the way that would look would be, a teacher teaching a regular class, but maybe 4 of our kids are in the class and 4 are at home. So we broadcast the lessons to the children at home and allow them to participate remotely. We would send any paperwork or materials that they need to follow along with the lesson as the teacher teaches. So the teacher would be teaching 4 students in front of them and possibly 3 or 4 students at home through a Zoom meeting like this, and they'd be able to participate in the lesson. And so that's our model. We got some pretty good feedback on that. Right now, we're still kind of sorting out the numbers to see what the ratio would be of kids that would be in the facility versus kids that would be home. Our teachers would be teaching from the facility. That would allow them to use the whiteboards and the technology to broadcast the lessons out. So we're pretty excited about it. Number one, because we think it provides some opportunities to everybody. But the second part of it is a good experiment for the fall, for when we could see kids and teachers go on quarantines for 10 days and need to maintain their coursework. And we also believe one of the big concerns throughout the fall or the spring was the lack of structure in remote instruction. The lack of structure, some kids really, really thrived with the lack of structure. Other kids did not. And some of the kids that did not were kids with special needs. So we believe that this model will provide a schedule and structure, and also all the therapies will either be in person or remote that go with that.
Okay, any questions for Chris? Seeing none. Okay, I'm going to move on. So this is my last, but it's not the least at all, in addition to recognizing John Griffin for his service as a board member. Just want to take a moment to give recognition to Elaine for her service as board president, since this is her last meeting in the role of board president for now, and also to Mr. Boucher for serving as vice president. So thank you both for your service in that capacity. Really appreciate it. And it was a good duo to onboard with, and I do thank you for your time and your guidance and your advice. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you for your comments.
So having said all of that, I am now done with the DS report.
Okay, we will move forward with approval of the minutes. We did get an amended agenda, which is relates to the minutes. If you could, Dr. Kilburn, explain that to us. I didn't pull it up to print it out, so.
Sure. So in your previous minutes, in your April minutes and in your May minutes, there was policy 4105, which has to do with authorized signatures. It was reviewed by policy committee, and it has been set before you on all the previous occasions for the required readings. However, when the minutes were written, it got dropped out of, just out of the document. It was a forgotten number. It got dropped. So Deb noticed it, and we had to think about, how do we do this? Do we have to reintroduce this policy for readings again? So we called our attorney, and they got back to us just recently and said, what we can do is how it's reflected below to you. So approve the May minutes normal, and then approve these 2 amendments to the April and May minutes as written right here in your document. So we actually took the language verbatim and dropped it right in here, so you can see that we're just incorporating that back into the minutes because you have reviewed them and you did vote on them.
Okay, so I would ask for an action to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of May 13th and the 2 amended documents that were sent.
So move.
We have a motion,
So move.
and we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Now we'll move to the consent agenda. Those are items B, C, and D. Before I have a motion, I would like to ask if there is any item, especially in section D, that anyone would like explained or have a discussion about or ask a question about.
I have a quick question about the lunch rates going up.
Okay, go ahead.
And I read it, but I read it a few times and I think I need someone just to explain something to me. So the only option that's going up are the full priced lunches. I'm trying to get to the page. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah, at the breakfast.
But not even the free or the reduced lunches are not going up either. So it's only the students that are paying out of pocket. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, Charlie, can you explain this to the board?
Yes, I think I can. So it is only the full price lunches that are going up. And the reason is, I think it is explained in the memo, and I've not added either, Michelle, but
It's 157.
Page 157.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think there it talks about the equity and price in school lunch pricing, that there is an amount that we receive in reimbursement from the federal government. And we're supposed to be taking steps to make our full price lunches reach that level. So that is the reason for this 25-cent increase only on the full price lunches. The free and the reduced price will stay at its level. We talked to the superintendent group about this, with the turmoil that's gone on in the financial world for school districts. And it is really something that they endorsed, because it's about a little over $100,000 if you look at our average number of full price lunches that we serve. And with the school lunch program operating at about a break even, it's would be necessary with wage increases that will continue in 2021, et cetera. So that's the reason that it is being brought before you. It's typically brought a little earlier. We pulled it back to talk to the superintendents about it ahead of time. And that's why it's in front of you now in June instead of April or May, which it normally would have been.
Now, Charlie, by doing that this time, by raising it this time, next year is going to be a tough year for us. So maybe it'll put us in a position where they won't have to raise as much or maybe at all next year. And that's going to be where there's going to be more of discussion about costs than there are right now.
Absolutely. I think it's scheduled every 2 to 3 years. So if we do this, if the board approves this tonight, we would certainly not bring anything back to you next year. But unless the federal government said, hey, you've got to step it up and get to that reimbursement rate a little quicker. But they've been on board with our process of slowly getting to that level.
Yeah, because there have been a couple of times that we've put it off for a year.
Yep.
But it makes sense this time, I guess. The superintendents are with it, so it's on the agenda.
So that's a price increase, just so everyone
right
has figured this out. It's $450 about per family. That doesn't, I mean, I guess if you're paying full price, that you're supposed to be able to take that cost, but it's sort of significant just during this time where people don't have jobs, or their situation has changed. I don't know how that affects people applying. Are they allowed to apply at that point for free and reduced? I don't know the answer.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So
I
free
guess
and reduced
that's
lunch.
accounted for. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So parents can fill those out at any time. So the free and reduced lunches, a lot of schools will send those applications out frequently just to make sure they're capturing that.
Mhm.
And Michelle, your point is right on the money, and the superintendents recognize that. But to Elaine's point, that's why they said move forward this year, because they're concerned about next year. And if we don't continue to do this, we're going to run into a problem with the federal reimbursement, and we don't want to risk that either. So, yeah.
Next year we could be brave and say we're not raising it. No, it'll look good.
No, it's just my first run around with this. So I it sort of stood out, and I wanted a conversation. That's all.
Great.
Thank you.
Any other comments or discussions on any other items?
Elaine,
Yes.
I'm sorry, but I have a bunch of questions in regards to the policies. I'm not sure how you want me to do that. Or if,
Uh,
I don't want to take up a lot of time, but I do have some questions.
well, I mean, you'll have to handle it in the shortest time you can and to your satisfaction. Certainly, we want to hear, are there any policies you think ought to be pulled because you have
No,
objection?
I'm just looking for clarifications. And, you know, just like Michelle was saying, there's some confusion on my part on exactly what it means. So,
Okay, well, do you want to attempt
yeah, if we could,
move forward?
I'll try, I'll do my best. I didn't write page numbers down. But I'm looking at the first policy that came up, the 7400. In Roman numeral 2, D2, it has employees. I don't have the document in front of me. I don't know if that can be put up or not, Trish, but.
This was particularly difficult to handle because there was so much, 160 pages. So
Yeah, there was.
You're
there was a
brave
lot
to read through, Russ.
Okay, so I'm looking at D2.
Roman
Yeah.
numeral 2, D2.
Yeah.
Why is employee part of the education records? I mean, I know it's under definitions, but I'm not sure
Why that is. So
why that is.
actually, that's part of the definitions of what education records do not include. So as part of the policy, they define education records, then they talk about how they can exist. And then there's a tiny little sentence, it's hard to catch, and it says education records do not include. And then those numbers 1, 2, and 3 are clarifying that the records listed as 1, 2, and 3 are not considered educational records. And that's why that's in there.
Okay, so the medical is under HIPAA, and that's not why.
Right.
Well, I did miss that. If go to Roman numeral 4, A3, it talks about the military. And I'm not sure if this is covered under notification or rights. But how does that release get to students and parents? Is it under the notification right in the beginning of the year where they can have the military not get their information? Because doesn't the military just ask for all students?
I do not know. That's a great question, and I never thought to ask it, is if it's part of an initial disclosure at the end. It's not part of our, you have to define the directory information of what's considered open information, and this does go beyond that. So whether or not there's a disclosure that specifically indicates the military in our process, I do not know.
And wouldn't they be going to the local districts for those students and not BOCES?
Yes, I think that they most likely would be going to the local districts for those students because that's where their education records are housed, excepting for students who might be with us all day. Chris, might you know if they do that?
Recruiters come to CTE only, really. They don't come to SPED and it's usually a set up table. I'm not aware that we're disclosing their records. A lot of times they have a connection with a kid because of back at the home district, or they'll come and speak to the criminal justice careers or things like that. But I'm not aware of us disclosing the records. I'm actually going to follow up on this because I'm not aware of that.
But it says that the students can sign a release to prohibit that.
Yeah.
So it sounds like they're asking for general information, and if you didn't sign that
they get it.
Release, that information is going to go out, and that doesn't seem if that's the process, that doesn't seem right.
One of the
Um,
things, one of, oh, go ahead, Gary.
That is the process, and this is very controversial topic you talk bringing up right now.
It's the law.
There's a lot of discussion
Law,
on this, that
yeah.
the law has set them up that they have access to student information. And there's a lot of controversy.
So that was the point I was going to make, was that this might not be something where it's an option for us more than where it's a legal compliance that the policies in alignment with. And that also would be why it would be reflected in our BOCES policy, though to your point, Russ, in fact, the recruiters are most likely having to go to the home districts to get educational record information.
But still, I want to know how that release gets in the students' hands early enough so they can't get that information. Thank you, Gary, for that clarification. It will stay under Roman numeral 4, A4, the third bullet. It talks about Rick and the vendors. Help me understand that.
Okay, so I want to make sure I'm reading the same page. So I'm on Directory of Information, Military Recruiters, School Officials with a Legitimate Educational Interest. And then defining the fourth bullet, did you say?
It's under A4 bullet, or it's under A4 bullet 3.
Bullet 3.
What about Rick and vendors?
Okay, let me find it. 2. We're still under number
4.
Number 4, written consent. A4,
Bullet 3.
bullet 3.
The last
Okay.
bullet.
Oh, here we go. Yep, thank you. So the RIC is the Regional Information Center.
Yes.
And then they house a lot of the data and software programs for our schools and our districts. So let me give you an example. One is our student management system that holds all of the educational records for our students. That's managed through the RIC. So when we have to pull any data or do any retrievals, we would need to work in cooperation with them, but they're required to work in accordance with FERPA. And then also they have different vendors for different products. So School Tool is a company housed in Rochester. So even though the RIC is the one housing all that data, School Tool is the vendor. So we have to have cooperative agreements for that data sharing, but they have to do it in accordance with FERPA. And in addition to this policy, they also have to do all of this now in accordance with Ed Law 2D, which is the protection of the personal information.
So under that new law, then they sign an agreement, I would hope, that
yes, that protects the rights of privacy and protects that information. They have to show that they're protecting that data pool and not sharing it.
Okay. But it says you can request that information from the vendor, from Rick to get the vendor. Who's requesting that?
A request for a complete list of current vendors may be submitted to a records access officer.
So that would be our BOCES.
Yeah. I just want to answer a call. Michelle Anderson was asking, what policy are we looking at? It was through the chat. So if you're wondering why you didn't hear Michelle ask the question, because she was savvily typing it. And we are looking at policy 7400, education records.
Just moving on. I don't want to take a lot of time here. Still under Roman numeral 4A8. Wouldn't that be FERPA?
Information orders to conduct students of the application was developed by the administrative professional tests. Yep. Well, yes, FERPA, but there could also be additional regulations.
Who would oversee FERPA?
Well, the school districts, we're responsible for making sure that we're in line with FERPA. So we can share information. So for example, if there was a study being done and they wanted access to our directory information, we know that FERPA doesn't apply, we're okay with that. But let's say they want to access how many students receive free and reduced lunch. We might be able to strip that data in accordance with FERPA so we can give them those percentages without releasing any identifiable or pertinent information to the child. So what that's saying that we're going to make sure we do it in accordance with federal, we're obligated to FERPA. That would be one part of it, but there might be other federal standards that have to be in accordance with depending on the information that's being asked for.
Well, I guess that's where my question comes in, because when we usually do policy, we go back to the law within that section, and it just says federal. So that's why I'm asking if it's FERPA, and if it's more than FERPA, should we list what those other federal laws are, or are there too many?
Yeah, and remember that the landscape always changes. So using this was created by the attorneys for us. So using that larger umbrella provides a greater protection for you. So that way you're not having to constantly rebuild the policy as things change.
Okay. A9, accredited organizations may release. Based on what?
It's saying that we may release information to those organizations to carry out their accrediting functions.
But it says may release.
Yep, we may not to. We may choose not to. We may say, nope, we're not releasing this to you, or nope, we're not giving you this part, or yep, we can do that and we have the right to do that. So we would have to follow all the appropriate standards of information sharing. We can't break the rules, but it's saying that we can enter into an agreement with such an agency.
Okay. In the next one down, 10, define reasonable effort.
Provided that OHM BOCES makes a reasonable effort to notify the affected parent. I think that that's a legal term. Certainly in this case, well, yeah, it is. But what I mean is, in a case where we get a subpoena for information about a child, and we do get them, a lot of times you'll see them come through from family court. What we're not doing is just pulling the information off the shelf and sending them back through. You have to take that to your attorney, who walks you through that process, and they in that process will define reasonable. So, you know, it depends. Sometimes a day is reasonable, sometimes 9 days reasonable without seeing the subpoena and what the information being asked for in the subpoena is. We would defer to the legal guidance on that. And I think that's exactly why you're seeing reasonable standard in that language, in that term. So, for example, if we get a court order to release information to a child advocate in family court, and we're trying to get a hold of, let's say, the mother who's the parent on record with the schools, and we call and we call and we go to the house and we send 3 certified letters, and the return receipt is indicating that no one's getting these letters. That would be a phone call to the attorney, say, okay, look, we're trying to do everything we can to provide this parent notice. And the attorneys are going to say, yeah, go ahead. You got to give the court that information. And you've demonstrated a reasonable attempt to get a hold of the parents. So it's different, and it depends on what the ask is, and it depends on who the parties are. So again, that's where you would go to your attorneys for clarification.
Elaine, I don't want to take up, I've got a bunch of pages here. Is it all right if I just give Trish a call with the other questions? Or
Sure. I guess what I'm saying is there any reason that we need to not pass some of these? Because policy is a statement that's open to interpretation and implementation. The people, and when it gets challenged, that's when it gets looked at, to implement it and to interpret it. That's in our pocket when we're dealing with a policy. How we interpret it, how we act on it. And then we can get challenged, and that's defended or one way or another. So, you know, we can't.
I know, but
you know, it's tough because we could change a lot of things around, and it's up to us and our people to do what's the right thing to do so that we don't get challenged.
right. But in my whole issue is transparency. And when you use certain words, I mean.
Yeah, but they're there for that reason, Russ, so that they can be challenged.
Yeah.
That's the reason why policy is very vague. It's open to who's challenging it or who's implementing it.
Well, and that's often why we put the legalese, the legalese in the documents. Gary Porcelli, I think, wanted to say something.
Mrs. Falvo?
Yes, Gary.
Yes.
Yes.
Is the policy that Mr. Stewart is speaking about, and I think two others, are they first reading? And so consequently, the action we take, well, Mr. Stewart's questions can be reviewed by the committee, or are these all second reading policies?
74.
I don't recall the one that Mr. Stewart is I don't recall the one Mr. Stewart speaking about as I thought it was a new policy when the committee reviewed it. So I thought three of them were new policies, and consequently that's first reading. And Mr. Stewart's questions are certainly germane. I'm not sure about the others. I think the others are just review.
I guess I'd like to ask Russ, you have a lot of questions, you've asked some of them and they've been answered. Is your thinking to the point that you may not want to accept some of these policies? Or is an explanation of them going to help you to understand?
No, let's not hold this up. That's not my
Okay,
intent
that's what I mean.
at all.
Okay.
My intent is, I get we're trying to protect us, but sometimes while we're trying to protect us, we step on other people's
Right, absolutely.
other people's toes, where I would like a little more clarity that we're being transparent.
And the other people are innocent to a lot of things. They get
Right,
taken in.
right. Right. So that's I clearly understand.
It may Mr. Stewart's concerns if he were made aware of the fact, and they're legitimate, and I understand them. But at the last policy committee meeting, not acting as an attorney but present was Mr. Pello from Madison, Oneida. So we did have some degree of legal guidance as we went through these.
Yeah, that's why, Gary, I wouldn't vote it down. I mean, you guys did a great job. That's not my issue.
Okay,
It is not.
so then I'm going to step in now and I'm going to ask for approval of consent agenda items B, C, and D.
Could I, on the code of conduct, suspension, I'm just going to leave a question out there. Is there another way? Come on, is there another way that we can do suspensions? And in regards to the Roman numeral VG1, where it talks about the Board of Education, and that prior to the code of conduct, we're going to meet with certain groups. How and when did that happen?
Maybe it didn't.
Oh, hang on.
It's just a policy.
So we just write things, but
Well, it's something
this
like.
is my point with policies.
Yeah, right. Policies are tough. That's right.
It says that it clearly says that the board will meet with students, parents, teachers, administrators, the whole 9 yards.
But they have to come to us to enforce their policy.
Well, see.
It shouldn't be, I understand, but that's what the policy's there for, to prohibit us from not meeting.
I do. I think that Russ raises a point that's important. And also that we just had that discussion about race, and that there are some great things in that policy, as Gary Porcelli pointed out, but there's some room for growth, and we have to look at that code of conduct for that growth. So I think a good place to move forward from here is that knowing we're putting that on our agenda, that we move forward with the code, but that we revisit with that in mind and look at that part where we should be having that conversation with students and the board, and intentionally incorporate that back into the practice where it should be from this point on.
Well, I'm gonna take it a step further if you don't mind, Trish. I'm gonna vote no on the code of conduct based on that and put a minority opinion in that states that we do that. Otherwise, I know what's gonna happen and you know what's.
It'll just move on and we'll be here next year.
Right.
Yeah.
So at least I'll have the privilege of that minority statement saying, wait a minute, we didn't do this.
Yep.
Okay, we didn't meet with teachers, we didn't meet, and because of that, I cannot vote for the code of conduct.
Well, do you want to make an amendment and then we'll vote on that amendment, Russ?
Oh, we have
Yeah,
to-
I don't mean to be a pain in the butt, I
No,
really
you're not.
don't.
That's okay. We'll vote on the amendment first and then we'll vote on the consent agenda.
We
So,
have to back up. Deb Kimball, do you have a procedural?
Yes, we did not have a motion to begin with.
There we go.
so I'm confused because on one agenda, it has the 7400s, and then on the other agenda, it only has the 40 or 4000s. So do we have a new agenda someplace? So the yellow one only has, which came with our, is that with our packet?
Yep. The yellow one stands with those, and then, let me pull up agenda 2. We have 2 agendas.
We're working off 2 agendas.
No, there was a second agenda set out with the appropriation of the revised minutes that we had talked about
Minutes.
earlier.
Wasn't any of
So,
that.
okay, so action items, you're approving policy 7400, 5304, 5307. So 7400 is listed.
Yes.
51. Okay.
Dr. Kilburn,
Yes, Gary.
again, I'm sure that the policies, I'm not sure that the 3 policies you just read have had a first reading. And that may be the cause for the split that Mrs. Anderson is speaking to. I don't know, I'm just suggesting. The other policies that are included in the packet may be indeed second readings, because we've done them before. But the one on educational records and the 7400s, I don't recall the policy committee, maybe the other members can speak to this, but I don't recall the policy committee having dealt with those 3 policies prior to this. So I would think this is their first reading, and we can't approve them unless all board members are present, and I believe they are. The remaining ones dealing with issues of payments for things and records and bidding, we've done before, and they may indeed be second reading. Mrs. Falvo?
Yes, I understand what you're saying. The first reading, some of these may be the second reading if they were brought up initially at a meeting where we didn't have everyone in attendance. So we
Right.
don't know which of these are first readings and which of them may be second readings. But whatever it is, first or second, if you want to challenge it, let's challenge it, whether it's a first reading or a second reading. That depends on if all board members are there or not. But if Russ wants to challenge one of these, it doesn't matter if it's the first time up or the second time up.
Sure.
Because unless it passes the first time, it's on the table the second time.
Excellent point. I stand corrected. Thank you.
Yeah, so,
Elaine, can we pull the code of conduct and
well,
approve
that's what I'm
everything else?
saying. We can pull the code of conduct and have Russ make an amendment to pull it, or someone make an amendment to pull it. Vote on that amendment. Then he can get his questions answered, do whatever we want to do procedurally before it comes back again. If he wants us to address it, he wants us to look at it or whatever. Then once we vote on the amendment, we pull that, and then we'll vote on the rest of the consent agenda and we can move forward. How does that sound, Russ?
That sounds fine, and I move that motion.
Okay,
And I second.
okay, we have a motion and we have a second to pull item D4, approval of code of conduct from 2021 school year. All in favor?
Yes.
Oh,
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we will vote on consent agenda items A through or B through D, excluding D4. May we have a motion, please?
So move.
Maureen, may we have a
second.
second? All in favor?
Just one other question on the dates for the board meetings. Why November 18th?
Probably just when the second thing of the month happened.
That is not the second,
It's a third.
it's the third. So I'm curious why we're voting on November 18th.
Why we're meeting then versus,
Yeah.
Instead of the second. Let me check.
is it a holiday? Is it November?
No, Thanksgiving's after.
Veterans Day.
11th, it's Veterans Day.
Veterans Day.
The second is Veterans Day?
The
Yeah.
11th is.
The 11th is Veterans Day.
Okay,
Yep, it is. The 11th is Veterans.
okay, thank you.
Okay, now we have a motion on the floor and we have a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? So moved. All right, now we can move forward, and I think the next place we need to go is executive session.
Well, no, because
Code of conduct.
you have the code of conduct. I do want to point this out, and I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know if Chris does or if anyone else does. Do we have to adopt that code of conduct by a certain date in compliance with law?
I believe we do. So
Yes,
I
you do.
believe it has,
Yeah.
I believe it has to be adopted annually. Just that, some of the thoughts on this, the code of conduct that is currently being proposed is the annual code of conduct. So all of the stakeholders, including board members, were involved in its development and its inception. The reason that we have not brought the committee back together is we haven't made any changes to it. That being said, prior to this discussion, we have two issues moving forward with the code of conduct, in that it doesn't really address disciplinary fractions during remote learning, which is something that all of our principals have asked us to dive into. So the plan moving forward was actually to get the code of conduct done and then get the committee back together as soon as possible to make the changes. And that was before the implicit bias and that kind of issue came up. But that our plan was to get it to you so we can meet the legal requirements and then bring the committee back together to look at it, because remote learning was the first issue that came in, that we need to do some things in that regard.
Then we would vote on a revised code of conduct, correct? After the committee did their work.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's some sort of guideline that says that we have to do it before July 1. But I'm not positive on that.
Well, then if that's the case, we can't wait for the June meeting to start to review this document. Because you put the board members in a corner of dates. So maybe in your tickler system, we start to look at this at May, and maybe start having that meeting. It really bothers me that, and this is why I asked a lot of questions on policy, because you're saying originally, this is the way that group of people did meet. I don't know how many years ago it was. I don't know what the issues of those times were, but times do change. And that should be done on a yearly basis. Maybe that should be part of the policy, that we do that with students, teachers, principals, board members on a yearly basis, so we don't get put in this corner again. I'll tell you, it really, really bothers me that sometimes we look for loopholes to get around certain things.
Yeah.
So those are my issues with the code of conduct.
So where do we go with code of conduct now? According to Chris, we should pass something by July 1.
Well, we got to pass what's in front of us.
Right, put some stipulations on.
So a motion needs to be made to approve the code of conduct because it was taken out of the consent agenda.
Approve it, what could we say? Subject to review and bringing it back?
No, I just think you know, our administration brought this code of conduct in front of the board to approve.
Okay, fine. That's
So-
fine with me. I'm just trying to,
Yeah.
you know, do what will make people comfortable. So who would make a motion to accept the code of conduct?
Move it.
Okay, Mr. Nelson, second, please. Somebody?
It was John.
Okay, John. All in favor?
Oh, I do have
Aye.
some questions,
Aye.
and one was in regard to Roman numeral 5G1. And part of that discussion with the board, it also talks about, is this code of conduct effective? So
Can we get
somewhere-
to a point of order now, though? Or can we vote on passing the code of conduct? And then if you aren't going to pass it and you've got things you want reviewed, we're certainly going to do that.
So are we gonna pass it with an amendment saying we're gonna do something later? Because we're up against the wall, it has to be done?
Subject to review, I don't know. That's what I'm suggesting.
Well, we can pass the code of conduct anytime we want. So we can pass it now, we can amend it in July or August.
Right, so we have to commit that we're going to
Go back and fix it.
do it and go back and look at it again.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to accomplish now, because we're not going to fix anything now.
When
But-
does, when does summer school start, Mr. Hill?
It could be July 6th at this point.
Like potentially, and you're saying that there's some concerns about the code of conduct in the areas of distance learning, yes?
In remote learning. So that's whole new territory, right? So we don't have a remote learning portion of a code of conduct yet. So we have to revisit it for that. And also now, in addition to the idea of addressing racial issues and disproportionality within that experience.
So to get a timeline, because I don't, you know, we obviously are all on the same page here. However, it doesn't sound like we really have a concrete timeline as to when things will be addressed. So I don't know if it's too much to ask to say, okay, our very first pressing situation is summer school. So can we make those changes by, you know, and have it amended by what's reasonable? I don't know.
Well, if it's going to be reviewed and redone, they're going to have to do it, the superintendents or whoever, before summer school.
Well, there's a few things to think about. One is to decide to pass or not pass this. And I brought up the point that there's a legal compliance, there's a compliance issue with passing it. And certainly now. Then the board can direct the superintendent to review this policy and enact the committee structures to look at this through the lens of bias and also to add remote instruction. In terms of code of conduct with remote instruction, I do not think that we're going to be able to draft a section of that in time for June 6th, July 6th, or even the week thereafter, because it's entirely new territory. So we haven't even yet solicited from teachers who aren't with us the types of situations they run into or what the challenges are for students in that paradigm. That's all new for most of us in the state. So, and in addition to that, you don't want the superintendent and the assistant superintendent and some principals packaging what they think should be the code of conduct for remote instruction and have it adopted in a code of conduct when we haven't put it through the committee structure. That goes back to Russ's point. So I think we have to put some procedures in place regarding remote learning, and that's going to be a new territory and a new challenge in a structured environment of summer school. But in terms of its incorporation in the code right now, I could not tell you that I think by July 6th, we could have something incorporated in the code by then.
Does our policy for, I'm at a loss for the word, for not software, well, I guess software, hardware, does our policy kind of cover a lot of the concerns that summer school would be having?
Well, I think some of the concerns might be like if a child is not attending, or let's say it could be some of the same situations you're dealing with in a physical classroom. It could be remotely, like you could be in an environment with maybe a child using profanity or inappropriate in the remote environment, right? Or maybe dropping icons in or something that's entirely inappropriate. So those are the kinds of things, among others, that will have to be given consideration by Mr. Hill and the group. So to go back to where we are right now,
we need to pass this code of conduct now. The
and then
way
you would want to
if we
direct
want
me.
it, then we want to direct you right now. If we want to say by the August meeting, we want it, the new one that's been designed with questions that members have to look at again, we can do that. But right now, we need to pass this code of conduct. Let's be practical. And that's what we need to do now. So I'm going to ask for a motion to pass this code of conduct. I think we have and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Opposed? Anybody opposed? All right, now, Dr. Kilburn, you have heard Russ's questions and comments. You've understand that the superintendents need to work on this. I suggest that Russ work with you and anyone else that has any kinds of concerns, questions, comments, input, discussion, debate on this, and that you then bring it back to us, I'm going to say by the August meeting in whatever form it is at that point. If it's not completely done, it's not completely done, but you will report back.
So let me give her my questions then. One is the review from the group. The second is there another way besides suspension? The document is supposed to be effective. What is the assessment tool that we use in order to know that this document is effective? Where is attendance? Where is, did I miss that somewhere in the code of conduct, or where is that listed? And my last point is how come it doesn't talk about good conduct? That's all.
I want to make sure I'm getting it all, so give me just.
Got that. Okay.
Not include good conduct. So I'm hearing, I think, 5 points. Number one, where is the review from the group, or make sure that we include a group in the review process as required.
On a yearly basis.
Yep, annually. Okay. Number two, where are some considerations to alternatives to suspension? 3, how do we demonstrate the effectiveness of the code? Hang on, I'm just writing that down. 4, where is attendance in this document, or in the related actions, I would say also? And why does it not include good conduct to the code of conduct? Did I get it all, Russ?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
Okay, we will move forward. Do you have it all? I believe you do.
Thank you.
Okay, now we will move forward. And I think our next action is going into executive session for, and would we say personnel and negotiations? Does that sound okay? Dr. Kilburn?
Yep, we're going to discuss the
Personnel
collective negotiations of the
and
BOCES.
negotiations, right. Okay, may I have a motion to go into executive session for personnel and negotiations?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Stewart, second, please.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Moore, I believe. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we're now in executive session. Whoever needs to close out, please do so.
So Scott Morris is going to put us in a breakout room, so he'll pull us out into another room.
Right.
Scott, Charlie has to go in with me, and everyone on the board. So you're going to get, I think, an icon that says, go into a breakout room, and you'll click it and follow where it tells you to go. But we're just going to wait for a minute for that to happen.
Okay, join breakout room. Click.
Go ahead and join.
How do we know if we're in it? Oh, it says join breakout room.
John, do you see where it says join?
I guess I wanted to be part of executive session. Oops.
John, can you hear me? Chris, can you hear me? So we're still live on YouTube, so if you guys want to mute your cameras and mics or whatever. Chris, I don't think even, Ian, I don't think you guys need to stay. I can't hear either one of you.
No, no, I don't think so either. I think that's what she said earlier today, right?
Yeah, she said we can go, so I'm out.
Okay, me too.
Deb, are you, I don't think you say?
I will have to put the motion in for the adjournment and when they come back in, so I'll stay.
All right, I'm just gonna mute my audio and video.
Okay.
She was gonna text me when they come back in
Oh, okay.
so that I could end the YouTube. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, is everyone back into the main session? Anyone? Well, we don't know if anybody's missing or not, but I'm going to assume everyone's back into the session.
Madam President,
Yes.
Madam President, before we leave and adjourn and all that, for Gary Porcelli, I want to compliment you, commend you, and just, I guess the word is praise you for the leadership you've shown over this extra year we added in for you. It has been superb, your leadership, and I mean that sincerely, and I mean it deeply. Thank
Well,
you.
I work hard, but I learn a lot more than I give. And so it's just wonderful for me. So thank you.
I
all.
second that. I second that.
Yep.
Great job, Elaine.
Okay. All right. Then without objection, Dr.
Motion to adjourn.
We're adjourned. Okay.
Take care, everyone.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Stay well, folks.
Leave, leave.